This is OC Street Files, and today we're in Memphis, one of the most important drug hubs in the entire South. Memphis sits right where I-40 and I-55 collide, two of the biggest drug highways in America. If dope was moving from Texas, New Orleans, Atlanta, St. Louis, it passed through Memphis. Whoever controlled those routes became Kingpins. In the late 80s and 90s, the Dixie Holmes crews in North Memphis turned whole blocks into open-air drug markets. South Memphis and Castalia Heights had their own organizations. Structured, disciplined, and run like businesses with lookouts, stash spots, and transport crews. Then came the heavy hitters. Crews tied into Texas pipelines, Mississippi couriers, and even early cartel connections. The feds cracked the Rodney Lamont Moore organization, accusing him of moving hundreds of kilos across Tennessee and North Mississippi. By the 2000s, federal task forces swarmed the city, indicting kingpins and dismantling multi-state operations. But the legacy remains. Memphis wasn't just a city, it was distribution power, and the streets knew it. This is OC Street Files. Follow for more.
Memphis has been a federal target for decades because it's not just a street city, it's a distribution city. The geography matters. Memphis sits on major highway corridors and logistics lanes that make it attractive for drug trafficking organizations that move product across state lines. And when you look at the public record, the story of Memphis Kingpins is less about one mythical boss and more about overlapping enterprises, street gang structures, prison-linked leadership, and multi-state trafficking conspiracies that federal prosecutors keep naming, dismantling, and redismantling as they reform. One of the clearest organized power examples in the record is the federal government's long-running use of RICO against high-ranking gang leadership tied to Memphis and West Tennessee. In May 2017, federal prosecutors announced a guilty plea by Derrick Kennedy Crumpton, identified in the release as an assistant governor for the Gangster Disciples in Tennessee, pleading guilty to RICO conspiracy and drug conspiracy charges in the Western District of Tennessee. That matters because it shows the government wasn't treating the activity as random street crime. It was treating it as enterprise-level coordination. Then in March 2020, ATF reported that DeMarcus Dion Crawford, also known as Trip, described as the chief enforcer for the state of Tennessee, was sentenced to 300 months, 25 years, for conspiracy to participate in a racketeering enterprise. These aren't internet names. These are names in federal releases tied to Memphis area RICO enforcement. Department of Justice ATF. At the same time, Memphis has repeatedly been hit with drug and money networks that the government describes as trafficking organizations and conspiracy cells. In October 2019, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Western District of Tennessee announced that 34 individuals were sentenced after a 2-year OCDETF investigation called Operation Gangster's Paradise, tied to federal drug and money laundering violations. That's the kind of case that usually includes wiretaps, coordinated surveillance, and financial tracing, because you don't sentence 34 people out of one investigation by guessing. You get it with structure, suppliers, transport, stash locations, laundering steps, and the people who keep money moving. Department of Justice. Then you've got cases where the government explicitly links street identity to a business-facing brand or cultural wrapper. In February 2018, local Memphis reporting described federal indictments tied to a drug trafficking organization associated with Major Stacks Entertainment. And the reporting noted connections to members' GOC associates from different traditional street groups, including references to Young Mob in coverage. That's an important Memphis-specific pattern. Sometimes the Music Talks Entertainment label becomes part of the public-facing ecosystem around a crew, whether it's a real business, a name used for image, or simply a banner people gather under. The point for the audience is, Memphis street power often has a culture layer, and federal cases sometimes name the umbrella right in the indictment cycle. Local Memphis plus one fast forward into the most current record. In July 2025, DOJ's Office of Public Affairs announced 8 Young Mob gang members indicted in Memphis on racketeering, murder, robbery, firearm, and drug charges. That one sentence alone tells you how the government is framing the operation. Not just narcotics, but a racketeering enterprise with violence, weapons, and organized coordination. It also confirms what locals already know. Memphis isn't just drug dealing, it's the collision of crew politics plus retaliation cycles plus money. Department of Justice. And then in December 2025, fresh present tense, federal prosecutors announced 15 alleged members of a drug trafficking organization indicted, describing a conspiracy to possess with intent to distribute large quantities of marijuana and a conspiracy to commit additional offenses. The release lists defendants and locations, including Myron Armstrong, BG, 49, Memphis, Carlos Atkins, Papa Smurf, Lowe, 52, Memphis, Willie Love, June Bug, 51, Memphis, Princeton Moore, Twin, 44, Memphis, along with others tied to places like Millington, Tennessee, and out-of-state locations including Oklahoma, Texas, and California, which is exactly what you'd expect in a pipeline case. In other words, Memphis as a hub, multiple states as the route, a group large enough that indicting it becomes a press event. Department of Justice +1. Now here's the kingpin truth that your subscribers will respect. The feds rarely call someone a kingpin in press releases the way the internet does. What they do is show you role, rank, and reach through charging decisions. RICO conspiracy for enterprise leadership, drug conspiracy for distribution networks, money laundering for the finance layer, and multi-defendant indictments that show a group has enough structure to prosecute as a unit. That's why your breakdowns need to anchor on what's documented: names, dates, charges, and jurisdictions, not folklore. And the music ties? Here's the clean, accurate way to frame it without making up affiliations. Memphis rap has always been intertwined with real neighborhood reputations, and federal cases sometimes reference entertainment banners or use communications, imagery, and public content to map associations and timelines. In the record we do have, Major Stack's entertainment itself becomes part of the case narrative and reporting around the indictments. The move is to treat music-culture as a context layer. Who references what neighborhoods get named, what imagery gets repeated, while keeping the claims limited to what's publicly sourced and clearly stated. Local Memphis +1 bottom line. Memphis drug lords exposed isn't one story. It's a pattern of federal dismantling over time. RICO leadership pleas and sentences tied to gang hierarchy in West Tennessee, multi-defendant OCDETF operations like Operation Gangster's Paradise, enterprise indictments tied to crews like Young Mob, and fresh 2025 trafficking indictments naming Memphis defendants and an interstate footprint. If you want the real Memphis case file, it lives in those indictments, those guilty pleas, and those sentences, because that's where the names, dates, and consequences are written in ink. Young Mob didn't start as a big-time organization. They came straight out of North Memphis, built by young dudes trying to survive the streets they grew up in. Back in the mid-2000s, Memphis started shifting from big-name gangs to cliques and neighborhood crews. People weren't joining national sets. They were building their own identity on their own block. Young Mob did exactly that. Their name grew because the younger members pushed it hard, making noise in the streets and creating a rep that spread past their neighborhood. They weren't organized like a cartel. They were organized like a family. Tight loyalty, shared struggle, and a ride for the block mentality. That's how Young Mob became one of Memphis's most recognizable names. What have you heard about the Young Mob of North Memphis? Who else should we cover in Memphis 10? Leave a comment and follow for more. Memphis, Tennessee. This wasn't a street beef. This was an internal execution. Two Vice Lords gang members were just convicted in federal court for murdering their own fellow member. Not over territory, not over money, over suspected betrayal. Prosecutors say the victim was believed to have violated gang rules, and inside certain organizations, that can be a death sentence. During the week-long trial, the feds argued this wasn't random violence. They told the jury the killing was meant to protect the gang's reputation and send a message: loyalty or death. The jury agreed. Both men were found guilty of racketeering murder, meaning the killing was tied directly to gang activity and the criminal enterprise itself. That charge hits different, because in federal court, racketeering murder can mean life in prison, no parole. This case shows something people don't talk about enough. Sometimes the most dangerous threat isn't rival gangs, it's internal discipline inside your own organization. Federal prosecutors say this conviction closes one of the most serious internal retaliation killings tied to Vice Lord's activity in Memphis. But the bigger question is, when loyalty is enforced by fear, how long before everyone becomes a target? Memphis has seen its share of street figures, but few names stay circulating like OG Boo Dirty, born Lance Taylor, a South Memphis figure whose reputation started long before rap put eyes on him. Coming out of Castalia Heights, Boo Dirty was known for moving through real Memphis street politics, neighborhood beefs, shifting alliances, and long-standing tensions that shaped whole blocks. His name started hitting headlines in the late 2000s, tied to both his rising music profile and legal trouble that kept him connected to the streets even as he tried to elevate. The most talked about moment came in 2010, when a confrontation at a Yo Gotti event led to multiple people being shot. Boo Dirty was arrested but later cleared. Still, the incident locked his name into Memphis street history. To this day, Boo Dirty represents a blend of street reputation, controversy, and survival, a reminder of how Memphis creates legends from struggle, loyalty, and the heat of real conflict. In Memphis, two names keep popping up online: Young Mob and Fast Cash. And depending on who you ask, what's being talked about is either a street beef, a rap beef, or just internet speculation that grew legs. What we do know is this: Young Mob has been officially named in federal court documents in recent years, tied to serious criminal allegations. That part is public record. Fast Cash, on the other hand, shows up more in music branding, rap crews, and older federal drug cases, not consistently labeled as a street gang in official releases. That's where things get blurry. Online, fans and commenters have pointed to diss lyrics, subtle name drops, social media tension, and overlapping neighborhoods as proof of a feud.
Bitch, nigga, you know what's up, nigga. Fucking somebody you thinking that loud, bitch, you keep your thoughts to yourself, bitch. You did a song with the ops, nigga. You know what's up, hoe ass nigga, you made the mob look bad, bitch. You ain't no gangster, nigga, quit lying to the world.
In Memphis, lines between music, reputation, and the streets can blur fast, and sometimes the rumor moves louder than the facts. What do you think? Real beef or rap mythology? Drop it in the comments. In Memphis, some crews move loud, others move quiet. Kings Gate Mafia, often called KGM, is one of those names that stays mostly in street conversations, not headlines. Tied to areas near Kings Gate and surrounding apartment complexes, Kings Gate Mafia is described by locals as a territorial neighborhood-based crew, made up mostly of younger members pulled in early. Former residents and old police reports mention intimidation tactics, forced affiliations, and disputes that turn deadly inside apartment courtyards and parking lots. Unlike nationally known gangs, KGM never became a brand. No flashy rappers, no viral notoriety, just block politics, internal beefs, and survival-driven loyalty. In Memphis, where dozens of small crews coexist, Kings Gate Mafia operated more like a pressure point than an empire. Short bursts of violence, long memories, quiet retaliation. And when the city moved on, the scars stayed on the concrete. This is one of those Memphis stories that doesn't trend, but the people who live there never forget. Follow for more.